will call one of the others. So I will introduce you as general, and then I will call you one of the ones.
I've got my three statistics.
Exactly. We make contributions to the classical language and interesting plastic crisis, and I think I will use the crisis because it makes it urgency.
I want you to describe
Yeah, it is for advertising.
And if I could see a single bird, what a joy. I try to write some words and create a single song to be heard by the rest of the world. And if empty cans were all I have, what a
Tuan. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are almost ready to start here in conference room number 3, our knowledge session on EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility. And just to remind you that in conference room number 4, there is a parallel session on access to finance. So I guess we are all set to start. Respectable guests, honored participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the EPR knowledge session as part of the Sea of Solution conference. My name is Francesca Montevecchi and I am a plastic technical expert at UNEP, and I have the pleasure today to moderate this session. So, we have heard already in the course of the past 1.5 days on the importance of EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, as a pivotal policy instrument to address the plastic crisis. The importance of EPR lies in the fact that it shifts the responsibility for the plastic pollution from taxpayers to the producers of plastic. And we have also heard that this could be a very important, a crucial financial instrument in the course of these 2 days. And today, we would like to deepen this subject and investigate a little bit better on what is the current state of extended producer responsibility in ASEAN countries and what are the challenges and potential opportunities. So, first thing first, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Kamala Ernest. She's the program manager for the Sea of Solution at UNEP for some opening remarks on Sea Circular and EPR. Thanks, Kamala.
Good morning, can you hear me? And welcome everyone to this session, which is a very popular session since yesterday. We have been talking about EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility. As Francesca mentioned, EPR is a policy approach. EPR is also a financing mechanism. It shifts the burden of waste collection costs from local government to the private sector. And if EPR is well designed and planned, it could also ensure an inclusive and just transition in addressing the problem of plastic pollution. So it's a great honor to welcome our panelists on behalf of UNEP and the Sea Circular Project and our moderator. For this exciting session, we are going to deep dive into understanding the different elements and also the role that the different stakeholders can play in coming up with this solution. So a bit about the work that UNEP does on EPR. We have been assisting countries in the development and operationalization of EPR schemes, including in Southeast Asia region through the Sea Circular Project. As mentioned also earlier, we have co-created the Global Action Partnership on EPR, or in short called GAP. It's a partnership with UNEP, GIZ, WWF, OECD, and the Prevent Waste Alliance. So within that GAP for EPR, there is also a EPR help desk that would provide technical assistance to countries to advance the implementation of EPR policies in different regions. So on Sea Circular, our unique approach is that we emphasize market-based solutions, evidence-driven policy making, and meaningful engagement with different stakeholders along the plastic value chain. So we have supported over the past few years national level EPR development and implementation. For example, in Cambodia, we partnered with UNDP Cambodia to raise awareness on EPR, as well as enabled peer learning technical exchange with Vietnam. In Vietnam, as they already have the law on EPR, so what we enabled or supported the Ministry of Environment is to then enhance the role or recognition of the role of women in waste management sector, and that would support EPR. While multi-stakeholder forums were created in Indonesia and the Philippines to allow governments and private sector to connect and exchange in discussing the challenges in implementing EPR schemes. So taking all these national level interventions to a regional level and for regional learning, we also embarked on a regional study on a human rights-based approach to EPR schemes by integrating the informal sector in the ASEAN region. And we did this by gathering insights from waste speaker champions, young shop owners, PROs, government representatives from Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. So during this session, we will talk a bit and give you some insights on this study, as well as also perspectives from our different stakeholders. Please look out for our report that will be launched later this year. So with that, I would like to hand over back to Francesca. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Kamala, and thanks a lot also for mentioning our upcoming report, which will investigate on EPR and just transition. We have heard already in the course of the past 1.5 days on the importance of the informal waste sector, and this is pivotal also in EPR systems. We have heard, for instance, that 90% of the plastic waste management and recycling relies on the work of the informal waste sector. So we believe that including, integrating and recognizing the work of the informal waste sector in EPR system is not just desirable, but it's imperative. We will also investigate on other aspects during this session. But first and foremost, I would like to show you a documentary video that we recorded as part of this study, which sheds a little bit light on the work and the importance of the informal waste sector in ASEAN countries. So please, our technical, thanks.
Ako po, si Ginang Cheryl A. Hernandez. Ako po ay kasalukuyang tagapamahala ng San Francisco Landfill Multipurpose Cooperative. Nagsimula po kami noon na ang amin lang negosyo ay namimili ng scrap sa loob ng dump site mula doon sa mga nasosort na recyclables ng aming mga sorter. Pero ngayon, meron na kaming hollow block making, meron na din kaming loan and credit, meron na din kaming race trading. Kami ay naghahakot na din ng basura sa aming sa Batangas City. Ito na yung aming pinaka-main na negosyo sa ngayon. Sa ngayon, meron na kaming less than 500 members. Dahil nga mga waste worker ang nag-umpisa nito, kaya hinihikayat namin mas lalo yung mga waste worker na sumanib sa amin. Dalawang paraan siya. Una, humahakot kami ng basura sa aming mga kliyente, sa iba't ibang mga school, sa iba't ibang mga food chain establishment. Nasa 40 establishment yung dadaanan nila sa loob ng isang gabi. Pag nakuhanan nila yun ng basura, idediretso nila dito sa bodega, ibababa nila yung mga food waste kasi yun ay gagamitin sa aming composting, ibababa nila yung kalakal kasi yun ay pwede nilang dagdag kita para sa kanila kasi bibilhin naman yun ng kooperatiba sa kanila. Pagdating naman doon sa pangalawa naming ginagawa, ito naman yung namimili kami ng iba't ibang mga scrap. Nakikipag-partner kami doon sa aming mga hinakutan ng basura na may mga MRF, lalo sa mga schools na kami na din yung hahakot ng basura, tapos kami din yung kukuha at bibili ng kanilang mga scrap. So, meron kaming tao na naka-assign na pupuntahan namin doon. May grupo na naka-assign, titimbangin yung bawat plastic, babayaran doon sa isang establishment, ibabalik na dito sa bodega, and then pagka pwede na siyang i-deliver, isang karga na sa truck, dadalhin na namin sa aming mga bayan. Yung Ito po yung dahil nasa makabago na tayong panahon na plastic ang ating ginagamit sa ating mga kinakain at ating iniinom, dahil sila talaga ang may malaking role pagdating dyan sa EPR law. Dahil yung mga manufacturer, bababa at bababayan sa kukuha at hahanap ng pwedeng magtrabaho para sa kanila. At sino po ba ang may kakayahan? Sino ang meron ng alam at sanay sa ganong klase ng trabaho? Yun po yung mga waste worker. Dahil kami naman ay kooperatiba na established na at kinikilala din naman dito sa aming lungsod, so maaring kaming direktang makipag-partner sa kanila at maibigay kung ano man yung kinakailangan nila mula sa amin. Dagdag sana kita at saka dagdag na mga makinarya para sa amin is worker natin. Ang kailangan na lang maging formal sila para po sila ay makasunod din at yun.
So, now I would like to introduce you with a little bit broader concepts about the current EPR development in the ASEAN countries. I would like to ask our technical assistants to launch, thanks, a presentation. So the contents that I'm about to show to you are part of this study that we were mentioning. This is just a tiny part of it, where we investigated on the current status of EPR development and waste management in 6 ASEAN countries. They are already mentioned. These are Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, and Cambodia. So I'm quite sure this first slide that I'm introducing to you is not new to most of you. We know that in the selected ASEAN countries, formal municipal solid waste collection rates vary. They can be very good in big urban aggregates, but are usually very low in rural and remote areas. There is a heavy dependency on waste dumping, open burning, and landfilling, and significant amounts of uncollected, mismanaged, and littered plastic waste. And the problem is that a lot of this valuable plastic waste material is not properly captured in the recycling system, and it is lost in the environment. And as we mentioned already, there is a high dependency on the informal waste collector for segregating, collecting plastic for recycling. Just to insist a little bit more on the role of the informal waste sector, I will not spend much on this slide, but I would just like to bring the attention on the potential savings, or the savings that are actually brought to municipalities and to countries thanks to the work of the informal waste sector. And this is about the saved cost for waste management, as well as the value that is in the plastic waste resources that are recovered and brought back to the market. Now, EPR, as we already mentioned, it can be a powerful policy instrument to make producers responsible for their products. It usually works through provision of incentives and mechanisms to producers so that they need to pay a fee to cover the waste collection and recycling costs. And it shifts the financial burden and the operational responsibility in some cases to the producers. In selected EPR countries, maybe some of you already know, there are some countries that have already adopted EPR legislation, which are namely Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, whereas the other 3 countries, Cambodia, Malaysia, and Thailand, are at a different stage of discussing and preparing and drafting the law, with plans to introduce EPR in the coming years. But here the highlight is that EPR is gaining a tremendous momentum in the region as a pivotal policy instrument. Just to provide you with a brief overview on what is happening in the 3 countries that already adopted EPR legislation, and to bring the attention on the variety of approaches that each country has chosen. So a first important part of EPR systems is the setting of targets. And as you can see, Indonesia, for instance, decided to have as a target a 30% waste reduction by 2029, as well as banning certain single-use plastic products by 2030. Whereas Vietnam decided to opt for mandatory recycling rates for determined plastic products based on life cycle assessment. And the Philippines has opted for diversion and recovery targets for selected plastic products. Different plastic products can be targeted. So just for you to know the variety of approaches, Indonesia opted for products and products packaging and containers, including plastics, whereas Vietnam opted to select plastic packaging with recycling values or that contain hazardous substances or are difficult to collect or treat, whereas the Philippines opted for all types of packaging that are either flexible or rigid, plastic bags, polystyrene. And the obligations can be also be tackled with a variety of approaches. So Indonesia decided to target producers, retailers, and shops. And specifically, they must submit a plan to the government to show how they intend to reduce, recycle, or prevent plastic waste. Whereas Vietnam and the Philippines, they target producers, and they must financially contribute to the collection and recycling of the products. The organizational setup of EPR can become very diverse and is complex, you might say that. But in general, we have two different types of approach. One is individual, and the other one is through the use of PROs or collective. So the three countries opted to give the option to the producer to decide either they want to deal with the waste collection and recycling individually or jointly engaging a PRO. And in Vietnam, there is even the option to financially contribute to the Environmental Protection Fund. Now, having a look at the countries that haven't yet implemented or adopted an EPR legislation, we see that the three countries, Cambodia, Malaysia, and Thailand, they are all in the process of developing legislation. Specifically, Cambodia and Thailand are already drafting an EPR legislation, and they are foreseeing also initially a voluntary approach to move to a compulsory approach, so they opted for a more phased approach. In Malaysia as well, we have discussion, and EPR is foreseen by 2026, and again, this sheds light on the importance and the momentum that EPR is gaining in the region as a policy instrument to combat the plastic crisis. So as a key messages, before we move on onto our panel, as I said, we can see that EPR can be addressed with a variety of approaches, targets, products, obligations, and different organizational setup. The role of producer responsibility organization is not mandatory, but is addressed in all legislations. The informal waste sector currently plays a crucial role, as we said. And I just want to remind that we have an upcoming UNEP report, hopefully by the end of the year or beginning of next year. And with that, I would like to move now to our interactive discussion panel on challenges and potential solutions for EPR implementation. So I have the pleasure to have on the stage with me Mrs. Athalie Reyes. She is Extended Producer Responsibility and Consulting Manager at PCX Solution, a producer responsibility organization in the Philippines. We have Ms. Nattinee Netrumpai, Head of Corporate Affairs at Unilever Thailand. Welcome. We have Mr. Krishna Ayyakana as Waste Picker Entrepreneur and Vice President of TSS, the Waste Picker Union from India, as part of the International Waste Pickers Alliance. And Mr. Akbar, our Director of Product Design of Hari Sudala, and he will act also as an interpreter for Mr. Krishna. And last but not least, we have Mr. Steve Hardman, Chief Executive Officer from the Plastic Collective, a social enterprise. So welcome to our panelists, and thanks for joining me here on stage. Let's move on to our questions for the panelists, and I would like to start with Ms. Athalie Reyes. And my question for you today is, what are the main challenges that you face as a producer responsibility organization in terms of legal challenges, operational challenges, capacity challenges in addressing EPR, and how you manage to address this challenge? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. And that's actually a very loaded question because there are a lot of challenges, but the good thing with this room is there are also a lot of solutions from different stakeholders. So the first challenge I would like to highlight would be more of a legal challenge. EPR in the Philippines, we just had our first compliance year in 2023, so it's still at a very nascent stage. So there's still a clear lack of enabling policies to standardize, to regulate, to properly monitor. So policies such as how do we calculate plastic footprint, how do we audit, how do we report credibly, how do we monitor and evaluate, right? So we need a lot of policies moving forward. So it's a good start, but yeah, we're not there yet. So as a PRO, our goal really is to be able to create value for our stakeholders, our members, our obliged enterprises. And of course, we want to enable a full system change that allows us to meet the objectives of EPR. Now, how we're addressing this is we have developed a voluntary standard called the Plastic Pollution Reduction Standard back in 2020. And we continue to develop this. Right now, we're already in version 8. So the PPRS, it's a framework for plastic recovery and diversion projects, plastic credits. And this standard has already been applied in over 7 countries in the world. So there is a lot of learnings from that application, that implementation. And we're sharing this with the Philippine government and our stakeholders in the Philippines. Apart from that, earlier in the other panel, there was a mention of the work that's being done by Prevent Waste Alliance. So we were heavily participating in that, in establishing some minimum requirements for plastic recovery projects. So this is important to ensure that there's environmental and social safeguards, there's transparency, traceability across EPR. So I guess in summary for that challenge, our approach really is a multi-stakeholder approach. And we are very lucky that the Philippine government is very stakeholder inclusive and also considers a variety of solutions, not just one. So there's this flexibility in our law that allows for that. The second challenge would be more of an operational challenge, and I think the work you did in finding a human rights-based approach to EPR is also very relevant, because one thing that is important to us is how do we integrate the informal waste worker system into a formal system such as EPR. And I guess it's not necessarily to formalize them, but instead make sure that the socioeconomic benefits of EPR trickle down to the informal waste workers, because they are the heroes here, right? So one challenge for us in integration is their lack of documentation, traceability for these. And one model that we've helped develop is one of our project partners, who we call Aling Tendera. Aling Tendera is basically a woman-led waste to cash community-based program in the Philippines. They're present now in over 130 locations, I think. And basically what they did was they assigned value to low-value plastics so that communities collect these and sell these to Aling Tendera. And in turn, the umbrella organization of Aling Tendera would buy these from them at the profit. And then this organization would now make sure that these are transported to a recycler or an end-of-waste processor, whichever is available for that type of plastic. So not only are they cleaning up the environment, but they're also providing income to the communities, to these women leaders, and also there's local government savings from not having to manage these wastes. So I think we're also trying to continuously engage with similar groups, informal waste groups, community-based groups, because that really is one of our objectives, to make sure that their efforts, their contributions are rewarded through the EPR system. And just as a last challenge is on a capacity challenge. So as you mentioned in your presentation, by 2028, we have to hit 80% recovery of footprint. And honestly, there is no recycling infrastructure in the Philippines, both recycling and collecting. So it's a very fragmented waste system that we have right now. So plus, there's also very few efforts right now to actually reduce the footprint. So that 80% gets bigger and bigger in terms of absolute value, right? So we are taking two approaches here. First is on infrastructure, right? So how do we build out the infrastructure that's needed to recover that 50%, 70%, 80% by 2028? And we think that developing a mechanism that allows companies to meet part of their compliance through investing in infrastructure is the way to go. So this is one of our priorities here. And the second one is we're also developing a market-based mechanism for incentivizing not only alternative solutions and the innovators around that, but also incentivizing, again, the producers, the companies to uptake those alternative materials and solutions. And again, this has to be in the context of compliance, because this is something that would motivate and really drive them apart from other things. So yeah, I mean, just as a summary, I think our role as a PRO is really to continue building and enabling that ecosystem around EPR. So find ways to collaborate with a multitude of stakeholders there. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mrs. Reyes. I liked your points a lot, and I take out with me some buzzword: transparency, social safeguard, giving value to low-value plastic, collaborating with especially women, informal waste pickers, and investing in the infrastructure for recycling as part of the responsibility of producer. I think these are very important points. Thanks a lot for that. And I would like now to move on to our second panelist, Mrs. Nattinee Netrumpai from Unilever. And I would like to ask, what are the three main actions that you're currently doing or have on your radar, and you would advise other multinational companies, so let's take a business perspective here, in relation to EPR in ASEAN countries? Thanks.
Yes, before I respond to the question, just let me give you an intro about Unilever. So Unilever is an FMCG. We produce 400 brands or more of consumer products. And we are in 190 countries in the world, and some of the brands are used by billions of people. The brands include Sunlight, or you may know the brand as Persil, Breeze, Omo, Knorr, and Walls Ice Cream, as well as Lux and Sunsilk and Tresemme shampoo. So these are just some of the brands. And now that you know the brand, you do realize our impact on packaging and the plastic industry, how large it is. One of the three main actions that Unilever has done, first of all, you have to understand your own footprint. So we deep dive into our own database to find out what is our packaging footprint. What are the types of packaging, plastic packaging, or any types of packaging Unilever is using, so that we understand the recyclability rate or the reusability rate or the compostability rate of our own packaging. After we know our own footprint, then the second action is we make a commitment. So Unilever has pledged to reduce our use of virgin plastic. Second is that we will make sure our plastic packaging are 100% reusable, recyclable, or compostable by 2030 for rigid and 2035 for flexibles. We will use 25% of recycled plastic in our packaging by 2025. And then most important of all, collect and process more plastic packaging than we sell in 2025. Already, Unilever is for the use of recycled plastic in our packaging, we are already at 22%. So only 3% more to close the target. In terms of collect and process, more than we sell, we are already very close to collecting back 100% of the packaging we put into the market. So these are the two important points that I would like to highlight. The third action that we're doing, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So we've teamed up with like-minded companies, also FMCGs and recyclers, to create the collection infrastructure, work with informal sector to incentivize them to collect low-valued plastic, which never had any value in the market at all, and create the value and demand for those types of hard-to-recycle plastics. Apart from that, we also work to create and make sure that the EPR law is facilitative and has a clear target for collection rate. So the goal is set and that there's a roadmap for the EPR law in Thailand. And as well as in Vietnam, we also work to see that the law is transparent and that the EPR of the pro is led by those who paid into the pro. But the government can also administer the pro so that the target is governed by the government and that the target is met in accordance to the national guideline or the national roadmap. So that is what we have been doing in the Unilever countries that we exist. Other than that, Unilever in Thailand, we're proud to say that we have created the demand and supply for the recycled HDPE, which never existed in Thailand before. So Unilever, by transforming our packaging design, we created the demand for recycled HDPE in Thailand, thereby creating the recycle industry and then led the demand, led the market. So now HDPE are now being picked by the informal sector to become feedstock into the recycling plant. So with our scale, we believe that we can make a move to the plastic industry and thereby create value in what used to be called waste and turn them into resources.
Thanks a lot. Very insightful, and I'm very glad to hear about the commitment of Unilever. And especially my big takeaways here is the huge power that you have in creating demand and supply for certain types of plastics, so as a big company. And also that you feel the responsibility to engage with the government for the law. I'm particularly hit by this fact that you want to use recycled plastic and you have targets. I just want to remind that to use recycled plastic in your products, you need a collection of the waste for this recycled products. So it's very important that you have this dialogue also with the government and the other stakeholders. Thanks a lot for that. And I would like now to move on to our next panelist. And I would like to ask Mr. Krishna and Mr. Akbar, as representatives of the informal waste sector, and we heard already the importance for the stakeholders involved that the sector have. What would be the advice that you would give to government, PROs, big multinational companies and the other stakeholders involved to accelerate the just transition of the informal waste workers in EPR system and formal waste management systems? Thanks.
Thanks. எல்லாருக்கும் வணக்கம். என் பேர் கிருஷ்ணா. நான் சைல்டுஹுட் வேஸ்ட் பிக்கர். 3rd ஜென்ரேஷனாக நான் வேஸ்ட் பிக்கிங் தான் பண்ணின்னு இருக்கிறேன். 3rd ஜென்ரேஷனாக வேஸ்ட் பிக்கராக இருக்கிறானுக்கா அப்பயே நீங்கள் புரிஞ்சுக்கோங்க இந்த சொசைட்டி எங்களை எப்படி வச்சுன்னு இருக்குதுன்ட்டு.
So I'm just going to translate what Krishna is saying. Namaste everyone. My name is Krishna. So I am a waste picker from Bangalore, and now I work as a waste picker entrepreneur and run a dry waste collection center. So I also act as a vice president for TSS. It's a waste picker union based in Karnataka, which is affiliated with International Alliance of Waste Pickers. I'm a third generation waste picker who's coming here and talking, and I'm going to explain about my living conditions, what we do.
இப்போ வேஸ்ட் ஸ்பீக்கர்னா யாருன்றது தான் அது கேள்வி. வேஸ்ட் ஸ்பீக்கர்ன்றது அது வந்துட்டு ஒரு சாதாரணமான பேர் இல்லை, அது பவர்ஃபுல் வார்த்தை. அது ஏன்னு கேட்டிங்கனாக்கா, இந்த இருக்கிற எல்லா வேலையிலையும் ரொம்ப ஹார்ட் ஒர்க்காக 360 டிகிரியும் ரொட்டேட் பண்ணுற வேலை செய்கிற கூட்டம் யாருன்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னாக்கா அது வேஸ்ட் ஸ்பீக்கர் தான்.
So when we talk about waste pickers, the term waste pickers, we generally refer where people collect valuable waste and trade that waste to make their livelihood. But I also want to emphasize waste picker word is a very powerful word, and it requires a lot of traditional knowledge and hard work. And working with waste is not a very easy job. So it needs all sorts of knowledge, and we work in 360 degree, whether we use our physical efforts, we use our brain, we use our senses while we engage with the waste.
ஏன்னாக்கா அது யாருமே வேஸ்ட்டு த்ரோ பண்ணுறங்களே, அந்த வேஸ்ட்டு பிக் பண்ணுற கூட்டம் எங்கள் வேஸ்ட் பிக்கர் கூட்டம். அது அந்த மாதிரி நம்ம வேலை செஞ்சுக்கிட்டு இருக்கும்போது ஜென்ரேஷனாக இந்த வேலையில் நம்ம எடுத்துன்னு வந்திருக்கிறோம். ஆனால் வந்துட்டு எங்களுக்கான அந்த நிலம் வந்துட்டு மாறல, அந்த நிலம் வந்துட்டு கீழே தான் இருக்குது. ஆனால் இந்த வேஸ்ட்டில் இருக்கிற நாலேஜ் வந்துட்டு எங்கள் வேஸ்ட் ஸ்பீக்கரை தவிர வேறு யாருக்குமே அவ்வளோ இருக்காது. ஏன்னாக்கா நாங்கள் அவ்வளோ இதில் எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸ் இருக்குது, எங்களோட நாலேஜ் இருக்குது, எங்களோட வேலை இருக்குது.
So since when I mentioned I'm a third generation waste picker, so you have to understand the amount of knowledge we have regarding identifying the materials and putting that material back into the recycling chain. And if you look at our lifestyles, we still live in very poor and hazardous conditions. So if you look at the larger waste picker groups across the world, their living conditions are very bad and in poor conditions.
இப்போ அந்த எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸில் ஒரு எக்ஸாம்பிள் கொடுக்கணும்னாக்கா, இப்போ என்ன எடுத்துக்கிட்டிங்கனாக்கா, நான் சின்ன வயசுலேருந்தே வேஸ்ட் பிக்கர் வேலை செஞ்சேன். பெங்களூரில் இந்த ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ட்ரைவேஸ் கலெக்ஷன் சென்டர் 2011 ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணேன். 2016 அவுட் டு செக்ரிகேஷன் இந்த மானிட்டர் த வேஸ்ட் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு ஒரு ஆப் டெவலப் பண்ணேன். அந்த ஆப் டெவலப் பண்ணி அதுக்கு கோஃபவுண்டராகவும் இருக்கிறேன். அப்புறமாட்டு 2018-19 இந்த டெக்ஸ்டைல் வேஸ்ட்டுக்கு வேலை செஞ்சுருக்கிறோம். டெக்ஸ்டைல் வேஸ்ட்டு வந்துட்டு அது எப்படி மேனேஜ் பண்ணுறது அந்த மாதிரி வேலை செஞ்சுன்னு இருக்கிறோம். அது போக எங்கள் லோக்கல் நம்ம ஆளுங்க கூட வேலை செஞ்சுக்கிட்டு ஸ்கூலுக்கு போய் நெக்ஸ்ட்டு ஜென்ரேஷன் பசங்களுக்கு எஜுகேட் பண்ணுறோம். செக்ரிகேஷன் ஏன் பண்ணணும், கிளைமேட் என்ன சேஞ்ச் ஆகுதுன்னுட்டு. அப்புறமாட்டு என் வார்டில் வந்துட்டு 17,000 ஹவுஸில் வந்துட்டு ட்ரை வேஸ்ட் கலெக்ஷன் பண்ணி நான் ரீசைக்கிளிங் பண்ணுறேன். அப்புறமா அங்கே இருக்கிற ஒரு நம்ம இந்தியன் ஆர்மி கூட வேஸ்ட் மேனேஜ்மெண்ட் வேலை செஞ்சுன்னு எங்கள் வேஸ்ட் ஸ்பீக்கருங்க இந்த லெவலுக்கு அது கொண்டு வந்திருக்கிறோம் நாங்கள்.
Yeah. So how do we change the perception of waste picker? So now, since I worked as a waste picker during my childhood, and I also looked at different kind of mobility, and I also kind of looked at how my work is important to the larger environment. So I have done many things in my life. So I was the first person in Bangalore where I run a dry waste collection center, which is a decentralized waste management system, which is established and it's supported by the local municipal government body, where I do door-to-door collection of dry waste and bring that waste to dry waste collection centers, sort, segregate, and put that into recycling chain. So I do the waste collection for 20,000 waste pickers on everyday basis. And when the waste, we look at certain kind of waste which didn't have value. So I worked so much, and now as a waste picker, we generated value for those wastes. So I was the first one to talk about textile waste in Bangalore, and we did a lot of IC activities and everything. Then it was also crucial how we spread awareness about the waste management system and linking back to the environment and everything. So that way I was involved intensively in in terms of creating awareness and giving awareness to students, schools, and civil society organizations and the citizens as well. And we also got into some sort of technological innovations also. So I participated in one of the hackathon where we developed an app which tracks your waste management practices at the household level and how much waste we have been generated, how it's going and where it's getting segregated and all those things. So I'm the co-founder for that particular app, and that is also still kind of like in practice in several areas in Bangalore. So how we can scale those up, those solutions and all those things.
இப்போ நம்ம அந்த மாதிரியெல்லாம் செஞ்சுட்டு அப்புறமா ஒரு கொஸ்டின் வருது, கிளைமேட் சேஞ்சுக்கு யாரெல்லாம் காரணம் அப்படின்னாக்கா எல்லாருமே சொல்லுவாங்க நம்ம எல்லாம் தான் காரணம் அப்படின்ட்டு. பட் அதுவே தப்பாக இருக்குது. ஏன்னாக்கா நாங்கள் கிளைமேட் சேஞ்ச் பண்ணுறோங்கள, நாங்கள் கிளைமேட்டை ப்ரொடெக்ஷன் பண்ணுற டீமு எங்கள் வேஸ்ட் பிக்கர் டீம்.
So we have done waste picker, coming from a waste picker background, we have done so many things. And when the larger conversation about climate change, everybody says everybody responsible for climate change. But I want to take a step back and say waste picker is not included that, because we work for the protection of the climate. So since we segregate, pick up valuable waste and putting back into the value chain, we are not carbon negative. So whatever work we are doing, it's carbon negative, and we would like to differentiate and take a step back that we don't contribute to the climate change. We actually work for the mitigation of the climate change.
இந்த மாதிரி தப்புங்களை தான் எங்கள் சிஸ்டமில் எல்லாமே நடந்துன்னு இருக்குது. இப்போ முதல்ல வந்த இபிஆராக இருக்கட்டும், இல்லைனாக்கா முன்னாடி வர அந்த பிளாஸ்டிக் டிடியாக இருக்கட்டும், அந்தமாரி தான் இருக்குது. நாங்கள் என்ன சொல்கிறோம்னாக்கா, இந்த இபிஆராக இருக்கட்டும், இந்த சிஸ்டமில் எல்லாத்துலேயுமே நீங்கள் வேஸ்ட் பிக்கரை வந்துட்டு பார்க்கணும். அது பார்த்துட்டு ரீசர்ச் பண்ணணும், ஐடென்டிஃபிகேஷன் பண்ணணும், ஸ்டேக் ஹோல்டர் கொண்டு வரணும். அந்த ஸ்டேக் ஹோல்டரை கொண்டு வந்துட்டு அவங்கள பார்ட்டிசிபேட் பண்ண வச்சு அவங்களோட இன்புட்டுக்கு எடுத்துன்னு வந்து அப்படி செஞ்சு பிறக்க தான் இது எல்லாமே வரும். அப்புறமா பேக்கேஜிங் சிஸ்டமில் வேஸ்ட் பிக்கரை எப்படி இன்வால்வ் பண்ணுறது, அந்த பேக்கிங் எப்படி அதை அடுத்த லெவலுக்கு வேலை செய்ய வைக்கிறது அப்படின்னு யோசனை பண்ணால் மட்டும்தான் இது எல்லாமே வந்துட்டு ஒரு கவராக வரும்.
So when we talk about all those things and we know what is our contribution to the larger environment, and when we create new policies, whether it's EPR, whether it's global plastic treaty which is coming in effect, we mostly neglect the marginalized section who's playing a backbone role in terms of like they're directly engaged with the waste and like work around that. So we want to ensure in the EPR and the just transition where our efforts and our work is acknowledged and given credits, and also it's not only acknowledging the thing, but we also want us to like get involved in that process. And how do we get involved? So we kind of like we should do more research and identify stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders who are crucial for this EPR, and how do we integrate waste pickers into this new EPR system is also very crucial.
இந்த பிளாஸ்டிக் டிடியில் கூட நீங்கள் நெக்ஸ்ட்டு அந்த கான்ஸ்டியூஷன் எழுதும் போது நீங்கள் கிளியராகவே மென்ஷன் பண்ணியிருக்கணும் எங்கள் வேஸ்ட் பிக்கர் ரோல் என்ன அப்படின்ட்டு. இல்லைனாக்கா நீங்கள் உடனே இப்போ பிளாஸ்டிக் டிடி எடுத்து உடனே எல்லாமே மாற்ற முடியாது. ஏன்னா பிளாஸ்டிக் டிடி வரத்துக்கு முன்னாடியே பிளாஸ்டிக்கில் வேலை செஞ்சுன்னு இருக்கிற கூட்டம் கோடிக்கான வேஸ்ட் பிக்கர் அங்கே இருக்கிறோம். இப்போ ஒரு சிஸ்டம் எடுத்துன்னு வந்துட்டு அது பண்ணிங்கனாக்கா அது தப்பாகும். அதில் நீங்கள் கிளியராக மென்ஷன் பண்ணி அதில் நீங்கள் க்ரீன் ஜாப்பாக கொண்டு வரதா இருக்கட்டும், அல்லது டெக்னாலஜி, இல்லைனாக்கா வேறு என்னென்ன வேலை இருக்குதோ அதுக்கு எல்லாமே எங்களையும் அது கூட சேர்த்துக்கிட்டு அந்த ரூல்ஸு பண்ணிங்கனாக்கா எங்களுக்கு எல்லாத்துக்குமே ஹெல்ப்பாக இருக்கும்னு நினைக்கிறேன். ஏன்னு கேட்டிங்கனாக்கா இந்த இவ்வளோ வேலையில் எங்களோட இன்புட் எப்படி இருக்குதுன்னு உங்களுக்கு எல்லாத்துக்குமே தெரியும். அதனால தான் நம்ம மீண்டும் கேட்குறோம், கிளைமேட்டு காப்பாற்றுற ஆள் அத்தனை பேருமே கிளைமேட்டுக்கோசரம் வேலை செய்கிற ஒரு கூட்டம் விட்டுட்டு போனீங்கன்னாக்கா அது நல்லா இருக்காது. ஏன்னு கேட்டிங்கனாக்கா இந்த வேலையில் நான் நிறையா லாஸ் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கிறேன். எங்கள் கூட்டம் எங்களுக்கு நான் எஜுகேட் எழுந்திருக்கிறேன், என்னோட அந்த லைவ்லிவுட் எங்களுக்கு மிஸ் பண்ணியிருக்கிறோம். இவ்வளோ வேலை செய்யும் போது அப்போ இதெல்லாம் கேட்டும் எங்கன்னா தப்பு நடந்துச்சுனாக்கா நம்ம என்ன சொல்கிறது? அப்புறம் இதெல்லாம் பார்த்துக்கிட்டு இருக்கிற ஹியூமன் ரைட்ஸு அங்கே என்ன பதில் சொல்ல போகிறீங்கோ? அப்புறமாட்டு பாலிசி மேக்கரு அங்கே என்ன சொல்ல போகிறீங்கோ? ப்ரொடியூசருக்கு மெயினாக இருக்கிற கூட்டமே வேஸ்ட் பிக்கர் தான். ஏன்னா அங்கே ப்ரொடியூஸ் பண்ணுற வேஸ்ட் அத்தினியுமே மறுபடியும் வாபஸ் அவங்களுக்கு கொடுக்க வேண்டிய வேலை நாங்கள். பட் இவ்வளோ வேலை செய்கிற கூட்டம் வந்துட்டு இங்கே கீழே இருக்கிறது வந்துட்டு எனக்கு நான் ரொம்ப பேஜாராக இந்த இடத்துல அது பதிவு பண்ண விரும்புகிறேன். Nandri.
Yeah, so when we talk about EPR, and we also now know that plastic treaty is going to come in effect, and we are finalizing the final text and everything. So when we get into that direction, we wanted to, our demand from the Waste Picker Union is that we need a clear definition of waste picker in the plastic treaty text, and we need to be acknowledged. And we need to figure out, and we have to, in the plastic treaty, we have to ensure the living wage for the waste pickers, and we also need to ensure the upskilling and reskilling of the waste pickers, and also integrate them into the green jobs and other alternative jobs. So that way we don't leave behind from this. And I demand this because we've been before these policy coming into existence and all, we've been working with the waste, and we are directly coming in contact with waste. So when you put some new rules to tackle plastic pollution, we wanted to ensure that we still have access to plastic, and we should be integrated the whatever transitions we are going to move forward. And if this doesn't happen, if we kind of ensure this, then I believe this is a just transition for waste pickers also. If this doesn't happen, then I still feel it's a human right violation for the waste pickers. And I would like to ask the same question for all the policymakers and researchers and the producers. If we contribute so much and work for the environment, we should be integrated, and we should be ensured just transition for this entire process. And thank you for allowing me to speak. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, and I could not agree more with everything what you said. And maybe if I may say about the need for more collaboration, acknowledgement, recognition of the informal waste sector. Something that I learned while preparing this report, I was mentioning before, and I hear that from you again, is that we are not used to think in these terms, but in fact, the informal waste pickers, the aggregators, the collectors, they are entrepreneurs. So what I kept hearing is that you are business people, you are involved in the trade, sale, and buying recyclables. At the higher level, the collectors and aggregators, they have establishments where the waste, the materials are collected, are processed, are washed, are separated. So I think an important shift should be to think of you as entrepreneurs, and not just as informal waste pickers anymore. Thanks a lot, and congratulations for all your hard work. And now I would like to give the floor to our last panelist, so to Mr. Steve Hardman from the Plastic Collective. And as a social enterprise, I would like to ask you, what are the three main contributions from the Plastic Collective to address the plastic crisis, and especially how do you see the role of other social enterprises in tackling the plastic crisis, and how can you interact also with stakeholders, business sector, governments, and so on? Thanks.
Thank you, Francesca. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here today. I wanted to highlight today a journey that Plastic Collective has been on for a number of years, and introduce to you a new and transformative financing model for plastic collection and recycling activities. And this is something that we've been working on with the World Bank and Citibank for a number of years now. And this financing mechanism is ideally suited to build collection and recycling capacity under extended producer responsibility programs. But first, I'd just like to run through this financial instrument that I talk about. It was called the Plastic Waste Reduction Bond. So in January 2024, so earlier this year, we, in conjunction with World Bank and Citibank, launched the first ever Plastic Waste Reduction Bond. It was a very innovative way of financing plastic collection and recycling activities because it focused on environmental and social impact and outcomes. In fact, to the extent that the World Bank now refer to this as an outcome bond. The first plastic waste reduction bond was a $100 million bond where the funding was sourced from private institutional investors. And these private institutional investors will be the likes of pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and they expect a normal commercial return from this investment. $14 million of the $100 million has already been deployed to 2 projects, one in Ghana, Africa, and one in Surabaya, Indonesia. These 2 projects will use the $14 million to expand their plastic collection and processing capacity by 500% within the next 3 years and convert an additional 250,000 tonnes of plastic waste into high-grade PCR content over the next 10 years. The funding is used by the projects for CapEx, so the buildings, the machines, the equipment. It's also used for OpEx, so ongoing operational funding when there may be shortfalls. But we also introduced a third capital requirement, which is SOCEX, a name that we coined ourselves. And this is for the support of and well-being of waste collectors. And it's approximately 50% CapEx, 25% OpEx, and 25% SOCEX. So these projects are now fully financed for the next 10 years. So what we've essentially done is turn 2 relatively small projects into large projects with significant environmental and social impact, which also produce meaningful volumes of PCR content which will be used by the brands participating in the EPR programs, and this will catalyse the shift towards circularity in these territories. So what's special about this new financing mechanism? What are the three successes we've had? And I look at this from the perspective of, first of all, three stakeholders. So first of all, projects, then look at it from brands, and then we'll look at it from waste collectors. So the success that relates to brands is relating to the obligation to repay the funding. So remember, debt funding is typically repaid. But in this case, the project that receives the debt funding under the bond is under no obligation to pay back cash. Instead, the project's obligation is to deliver environmental and social impact. So every time the project collects and recycles a tonne of plastic waste, its obligations under the bond are progressively fulfilled. After a number of years, the project will have collected and recycled sufficient plastic waste so that its obligations are reduced to zero. Now, this is a critical aspect of the bond. It's probably the most important part of the bond, because the projects are not cash or asset rich, but they are rich in social and environmental impact. And so this is a key transformation so that we can get capital to projects which would otherwise not receive finance. And essentially what we have done here is create a new asset class that the project owns. And that asset class can then be traded as any asset can. So the second success, which relates to the brands, and this might sound rather obvious, but the nuances of this are absolutely critical, especially under EPR, involves getting the off-takers of the project's recycled plastic output as part of the funding program. Those off-takers are the brands that participate in the EPR program. We get their involvement because it's critical that the project can deliver the precise recycled content that the brands require in the future for their packaging, so that the brands may meet their ESG targets in the short term and their EPR targets in the longer term. And this alignment so that the brands get the recycled material which is on spec, on budget and on time is vital for EPR success. The third success that we've had relates to waste collectors and talks to my previous speaker's point. And this is this concept of SOCEX, so creating a new capital class for waste collectors. And this directly provides funding to enhance waste collectors' livelihoods and well-beings. The projects are certified under a new social welfare standard called ZPO+, where the projects must operate to a strict set of social guidelines and ensure the workers are paid above average wages, provided health insurance and medical care, training and educational programs, plus safe and healthy working conditions, amongst other benefits. The projects are audited against the ZPO Plus standards and methodologies on an annual basis, and additionally, the projects engage one social welfare manager for every 50 waste pickers who works within the community directly with the waste collectors and providing them direct support and, where necessary, remedial actions. So by providing this SOCEX funding to the waste collectors, we are laying the groundwork for a significantly expanded collection capacity. So the combination of these three successes, we believe, delivers a transformative finance mechanism that others can replicate at scale in the coming years. It was a mission of the World Bank to use this first bond as a demonstrator so that other banks, be they private banks, other development banks, can issue the same bond structure. It's very transparent. We can show anyone exactly how it works to fund EPR programs and their projects around the world. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and that was really interesting. My key takeaway here is that it is possible to have innovative financing mechanisms that support EPR and support also the building of the infrastructure, which is very important for waste collection and for EPR system to work, and especially that can be scaled up so they don't stay at the level of small local projects. So with that, I would like to thank our panelists a lot. And now I think we can have some minutes to open to the plenary discussion and to see if we have any questions from the audience for our panelists before we go then to our lunch break. So any questions? Okay, we have a question over there. You might want to come closer to a microphone, please, because I don't think we have a moving mic.
Thank you for the opportunity. My question is specifically related to the integration of informal waste workers under the EPR laws. How can we ensure that we developed the infrastructure and work on capacity building so that the wastes that are being generated, they stay within the life cycle where it's allowed to be processed and recycled, and it doesn't leak outside the system. I'm specifically referring to one incident where you will find a lot of garbage in the Pacific Ocean, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, where most of the sources are from Southeast Asian countries. So in such a case, how effective the laws, the EPR laws, they come here so that such incidents can be catered and prevented, and there won't be any loopholes where the stakeholders, they don't come under these laws and they don't face the obligations that they're required to. Thank you for the floor.
So maybe I can start to address this question and then see also if our panelists have other insights. So the power of EPR schemes and EPR fees is that you can put a price tag on plastics that have absolutely no value for them to being collected. So what we see right now is that the informal waste sector, the informal waste workers, since they work under no regulations in this sense, they just collect what is valuable for the market. We know that PET bottles, they have a very good value on the market, it's very easy to be recycled. HDPE is another type of plastic that is easily collected and collectible and traded on the recycling market. But other types of plastic like sachets or multi-layer plastic, they have no values, and therefore the informal waste sector doesn't separate them and collect them. And EPR fees can put a price for the production and putting on the market and generation of waste of these types of plastics. So to me, this is one of the highly potential solutions to address this problem. And I would like now to give the word to, I guess, Steve. You have an answer to that, so please, Steve, stage is yours.
Yes, I mean, I think there's a very simple answer to the question, and that is EPRs implementing mandatory regulations for brands to make good their plastic waste. If you look at EPR programs that have operated under a voluntary basis, nothing changes. If you look at the territories where mandatory laws have been put in place, such as the Philippines, the brands do what they have to do. They do what they're told to do. And whilst the Philippines is got some challenges to address, this is one of the key takeaways from their success is the implementation of mandatory laws for brands.
Thanks, and now Athalie, I think.
Yeah, I fully agree with Steve, right? So I think this is where the importance of really clear guidelines, clear standards within an EPR system for what projects are, right? What offsets are, what credits are. I know we don't like hearing the word offsets because it's not really clearly defined in everything, but the law does mention it somehow. So there has to be very clear guidelines on what this is, what this contains, what this represents. So for example, our standard, we enforce our standard even though it's not required with plastic recovery, plastic collection projects, because this ensures that there are environmental and social safeguards. Like there has to be social inclusion, there has to be additionality, and there also has to be traceability, transparency, and accountability. So even if someone says that, okay, we're complying with the law, like we can't take that at face value. It has to be reported. People have to know what that means, what impact that makes, so that when a country like the Philippines reports that, okay, yes, we diverted 100,000 tons this year, right? How are we certain that that just didn't leak back into nature? So there's also a component of making sure that it's a full value chain that's being collected until end of waste processing. So I think just to summarize it, it's really, there has to be a standard and there has to be clear enforcement of a standard or a policy surrounding the targets.
Thanks a lot, Athalie, also for these insights. Any other contributions from our panelists? Please, Krishna.
அதுதான் கேட்குறோம். இப்போ நாங்கள் கலெக்ஷன் பண்ணும்போது நாங்கள் கலெக்ட் பண்ணுறது வெறும் ஹை வேல்யூ இல்லை. இப்போ நான் டோர் டு டோர் கலெக்ஷன் பண்ணும்போது எல்லா வேஸ்ட்டும் கலெக்ட் பண்ணுறோம். பட் எல்லா மெட்டீரியலும் நம்மளுக்கு அந்த ரேட்டு கிடைக்கிறதில்ல, ப்ளஸ் சேல் ஆகுறதில்ல. இப்போ மல்டிலேயர் பிளாஸ்டிக்லாம் வந்துட்டு அது கூட சேர்த்து தான் கலெக்ட் பண்ணுறோம், ஸ்டோரேஜ் பண்ணுறோம், பேக் பண்ணுறோம். ஆனால் வந்துட்டு அதுக்கான எந்த வேல்யூவும் இல்லை. ஒரு வாசம் அப்படியே ஃப்ரீயாக எடுத்துன்னு போயிடுறாங்க. பட் ஆனால் எங்களோட எஃபெக்ட்டு அதில் எவ்வளோ இருக்குது, அதுக்கான கிரெடிட் கூட அந்த இபிஆரில் சேர்த்தாங்கனாக்கா நல்லாயிருக்கும் அப்படின்னு தான் எனக்கும் தோணுது.
Yeah, so when we talk about EPR, I would like to give a own example from my own experiences and how EPR credits are claimed and used. So now, looking at the waste picker, their larger practice when they kind of like move, they have little more mobility coming from a free roaming waste pickers to like becoming an entrepreneur and running dry waste collection centers. And when we do door-to-door dry waste collections at household level, we'll not only pick valuable waste, we'll pick all the dry waste, including low-value plastic and multi-layered plastic. And for us, the high value HTP, all these plastics are beneficial, but still low value plastic and single use plastics doesn't give any economic mobility for us. And it's so we also understand it's harmful for the larger environment also. And when we bring this waste and segregate and trade the valuable waste, and we end up spending a lot of resources, our efforts and storage space to store this multi-layer plastic, then we'll kind of like figure out what is end of life for this low value plastic, and we'll send it to incinerator and all those things. But we are not getting the true cost for doing all these activities. And some companies come to us and purchase low value plastic and they trade it and they make EPR credits, but those credits doesn't reach necessarily all the waste pickers. So how do we ensure waste pickers are covering the true cost for their labor? And also how do we focus stopping this leakage also? It's very important. And we have solutions at our own experiences where we can learn from each other and scale that up.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. We have another couple of questions. So, okay, the lady in the first row. I guess she rose the hand first, please.
Hi, thank you for giving me space, and it has been great listening to all of y'all. My name is Arpita Bhagat, and I represent the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, Asia Pacific. We have over 1,000 organizations who are our members, including waste pickers groups and indigenous groups. My question is broadly aimed at PCX as well as Plastic Collective. We know that you yourself, ma'am, from PCX, just said that diverting and neutrality is not enough, as you said. We need to ensure accountability and enforcement to ensure that waste is properly but also safely managed. I'm keen to hear if PCX and of course Plastic Collective and of course Unilever as well see any way that credits and the finance that is coming from the private entities could finance a reuse and refill system and properly benefit waste pickers as Krishna has raised. Secondly, we looked at some of these reports. We had the Smoke and Mirrors report come out of Break Free from Plastic movement at INC 3 last year in Nairobi, which clearly showed that plastic credits are encouraging the burning of plastic. And it's a practice that releases harmful toxic chemicals, dioxins, furans, and of course contribute to greenhouse emissions as well. And 86% of the projects in the PCX database generate credits from burning, and 22% of projects from Vera, another credits company, one of the major ones, do. So when we have this information and when we are kind of negotiating an international agreement which aims to end plastic pollution and of course ensure good health for all of us, how do we see these schemes kind of support the real zero waste solutions as well as EPR schemes, which currently, the price per tonnage for credits is in Philippines, we know it's 100 pesos or something like that. Maybe I'm misquoting the figure, but it's pretty low for it to be benefiting in collection of the sachets. So how do we kind of make peace with the need of the hour, which is protection of health and just transition, but also ensure that we are not polluting the planet further? I would be very keen to hear from all of you all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll try to go through the points you raised, and I would like to have them all, but I want to start also with probably a misconception. Sorry, that was my watch. So I would also like to say that, look, we all know that plastic credits is just one very small part of the solution. We and all the standard setters, I think, are not claiming it to be the entire solution. So I don't think it would also be fair to leverage all the types of solutions, on plastic credits. Like take for example, your inputs on the waste pickers. So I think in the downstream part of it, which plastic credits do address, right, we can influence and we can make sure that the waste pickers, the informal waste, the vulnerable groups are compensated. And this is something that we are always working towards. Steve mentioned earlier these new upcoming social standards as well, like from Zero Plastic Oceans. And I think having this discussion on plastic credits, seeing where we can improve in terms of standards, is a very important conversation that we're having right now because of all the challenges and all the questions that we have with plastic credits. In terms of upstream measures, I don't think that plastic credits, how they are right now, is the right way to go about upstream measures, right? So it needs to be complementing the upstream measures with dealing with the legacy pollution with a variety of solutions like plastic credits. Now, on incineration, so that's a very complicated question because if you look at the examples that you mentioned, Philippines, Southeast Asia, and as I mentioned earlier, there's clearly a lack of infrastructure to be able to support a recycling market. So there's also fragmented waste. And while right now, this is the most viable solution for low-value plastic, for mixed plastics, we do put importance that the co-processing facilities, the incineration or waste-to-energy facilities do comply with the existing laws in the Philippines and in other countries. And there's also standards by the UN Basel Convention, technical guidelines on proper co-processing to make sure that it's not really something that adds on to environmental problems around the world. So just to say that this is also the reason why we keep saying that it's really important to have standards, to have guidelines, and to be transparent in them because we want people to understand and to see like what are the gaps and how do we effectively address them while including really a multi-stakeholder collaboration. So the solution is not perfect as it is right now, but I think that really with all the conversations going around plastic credits and mechanisms such as these financing mechanisms, there's really a great opportunity to consider all the different perspectives and really improve, right? So, I mean, we all want plastics to be recycled eventually and especially zero waste. Like if it can cut down on production, then yeah, definitely that would be a best solution, but we still have to deal with the legacy.
Thanks, Athalie. Any other contributions from our panelists to address these questions? Steve, please.
Yes, I think the subject of waste to energy credits, which is plastic waste which is incinerated, it's a very hot topic, but it's inconsistent with an objective of circularity. So in the fullness of time, I think it's something that has to be avoided. But if you look at the specific case in the Philippines where they have very little recycling capacity, almost zero, then what's the alternative? If you don't have waste to energy plastic credits, then the collection activities which are incentivized by that transaction would not happen. So you would have to wait 3 or 4 years before the recycling capacity came into place before you could actually even start collecting plastic waste. So clearly that's not an ideal solution either. So regrettably, I think the waste to energy credits in the Philippines are a necessary evil in the short term. And we need to transition out of that as quickly as possible. But I think you'll find it's a natural transition anyway, because the likes of Bloomberg and other media sources have been hammering away at these waste to energy credits, and the brands that have purchased them have really copped it in the head over the last couple of years, and all of those brands unanimously want to get out of waste to energy credits. So the moment there is an alternative, such as a credit that gives rise to invest in recycling capacity, the brands will pile into that, and they will probably also pay a premium for it. I mean, I think the price you talked about of $100, your price is, the waste to energy credits in the Philippines are actually cheap, very cheap. That's because they're a bad plastic credit. They're not good. Brands will pay more in the future, I think.
Thanks a lot, Steve. And I guess, Nattinee, you want to add something onto this important topic?
Yes, so for Unilever, as well as other brand owners who support EPR, I think the importance here is to make sure that the plastic are actually collected and transported, or logistically transported into the recycling facility. So the money that's paid for all of this is to create the collection, the actual sustainable collection infrastructure, so that the plastics are returned as resources instead of waste, as I've mentioned before. But there are also hard to recycle plastics, such as flexibles or multi-layer flexibles, that also needs the money investment to create the chemical recycling capacity, which doesn't exist in Southeast Asia yet at scale. So that innovation or investment in the recycling innovation is important for companies who want to see the circular solution to all of this. So I think, but thereby, if the plastic credit is an investment into recycling technology, then yes, it is interesting for companies who have the producers' responsibility, like Unilever, Coca-Cola, and so on. I think that's just our stance on this. Yeah, so I'll end here.
Thanks a lot. And I guess it would be fair to take another question. So we will take the last one in the sake and interest of time. Please, the lady with the dot dressed.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm Pishmun from Greenpeace, Thailand. This is the question for Unilever, that I heard that you said about the reuse many times. So I would like you to highlight or clarify to me more about your concrete plans about the reuse and refill to support you to meet the goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much for highlighting this. So as part of our plastic framework mantra, Unilever is focusing on less, better, and no. That's our packaging, rethinking of our packaging design. In part of the no plastic, we mean refill system. So for Unilever, we want a refill system to be established as part of the solution for the industry. We have tried to launch refill in many countries, and the solution that we found that it can be implemented if there's an existing reverse logistic. So if an EPR exists in a country, thereby there can also be a dual benefit here. A reverse logistic can also be created with the EPR a collect back system. So thereby building the EPR collect back system, we're also hoping to see an investment for a reverse logistic so that the bottles can be brought back to our factory and then filled with our products, because actually Unilever is producing the product that goes inside the packaging. The packaging is actually created by our supplier, but of course we cannot deny that our brands is on the bottle, thereby we take the responsibility of bringing back those bottles, those packaging to our factory so that it can be reused, refilled, and repeat by our consumer, thereby closing the loop of single-use plastic. So that is our mega plan. How we plan to do this is that we're exploring a reverse logistic supplier that's already happening at this very moment that I speak in Sri Lanka. So we are successfully able to crack a reverse logistic in Sri Lanka and bring back all the packaging we put out in the market and bring it back to the factory so that it can be reused, refilled, repeat indefinitely so that we don't put out virgin plastic into the market. Yeah, so I'll end here.
Thanks a lot. And with that, I guess that was the ideal closing, because EPR for reuse is like EPR 2.0 to me. So with this futuristic look, I would like to close this session, give a round of applause for our panelists. Thanks a lot. And thanks a lot to all of you for being here today and participating. And I think now it's time for lunch. So enjoy your lunch and see you around. Thanks a lot.